Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another episode of Fossil Friday. Now apologies because you're probably watching this on a Saturday, so yeah, my bad about that, but I'm at Crystal Palace today in London. Now if you don't know what Crystal Palace is famous for, it's famous for dinosaur sculptures, but not just any dinosaur sculptures. These are the first ever sculptures of dinosaurs in the world. So these date back to the 1850s. Now they were commissioned in 1852, but they were unveiled to the public in 1854. So they were designed by Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins, and they were directed by Sir Richard Owen, who was an anatomist and paleontologist of his time. So they were very well designed for 1850, but obviously to modern standards, they're not accurate because they're a snapshot in time. You know, these were done about 175 years ago, like it's a long time ago, and so the knowledge of paleontology and the fossils that were found was very different to today. So it's very cool in terms of its historical context, because we get to see where these sculptures, like the sculptures that were made here, they kind of show us what the knowledge level was at that time, and we can see all the different changes in how, you know, our knowledge on paleontology has evolved over these centuries. So it's really cool to see, and it's quite funny as well when you look at some of them, because if you have knowledge of paleontology, you'll take a look at some of these sculptures and be like, huh, that's interesting. But there's 15 different species that they've done sculptures of here, and they're not all dinosaurs. Only a couple of them are actually true dinosaurs. The rest are marine reptiles, so you can actually see some behind me. We've got some ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs swimming about here, and they're dotted around on these different islands, and then there's also some mammals as well. So these are now listed as grade 1 buildings technically, but they got grade 2 listing in 1970s. Then they've been very thoroughly restored in the 2000s, and then in 2007 they got the final kind of grade 1 listing. So their heritage status is very high, and they're trying to look after them, but obviously we're dealing with century-old dinosaurs here. It's a tough challenge, but they're doing it very well. So you can see that they're all still standing behind me. But one quite funny story is the giant sloth sculpture that's here, the Megatherium, actually was holding onto a real tree, and now this tree grew and it broke off part of the sloth's arm with it, so they had to restore that. But little things like that you just don't think about at the time of designing them, because they take so long to actually cause a problem. But another cool aspect of these sculptures is they're actually in age order, so depending which way you walk around Crystal Palace, you'll either see them go oldest to youngest or youngest to oldest. So it's quite well thought out, and it's definitely very fun to see all the different sculptures in kind of their weird looking faces, especially the dinosaurs. I find it very cute actually, like how they look, because they didn't really know much about how the dinosaurs lived because they didn't have many specimens in 1850. You know, these are based off of the first fossil kind of discoveries that were found, and it's quite interesting to see that they thought they walked on 4 legs, and now we know they were bipedal and things like that. So definitely try and come and look at them if you can. But I just thought I would show you around whilst I'm having a little look, and you can see the marine reptiles are just lovely, and they kind of are dotted all around, but they are covered in quite a lot of vegetation at the moment, so you kind of have to look for a while, and then you see like their snouts poking out here and there, so it's quite fun. The history of Crystal Palace is quite vast, and so I thought I would show you a bit of the historical photos here. So you can actually see this is one of the earlier prints, so it probably dates back to 1854 when the dinosaurs were being revealed by George Baxter. So you can actually see the grounds here as they would have been centuries ago. And then this image here actually depicts one of the very first kind of PR stunts for the Crystal Palace dinosaurs. And so it's actually a dinner party that is being hosted inside the cast of the Iguanodon sculpture. So you can actually see there that there's about 22 kind of gentlemen that are all sat around a table having dinner. And now this would have been, you know, a marketing stunt back in the day and done for kind of press relation purposes, and so these would have all been very key members, and there's quite a lot of theories around it. And you can actually see on the iguanodon there that there is a spike on its nose. Now that's quite interesting, and so we're going to dive in a little bit to why that is now. So what you can see here is actually a book that's called The Art and Science of the Crystal Palace Dinosaurs. So this is by Mark P. Witten and Eleanor Michelle, and it's a really incredible book that kind of goes into all the detail about the history of these sculptures, everything we know about them, the comparison of kind of the 1850s knowledge of paleontology paleontology with today's knowledge about the geology, about the conservation efforts. It's really, really incredible. So I recommend that if you're interested in kind of learning more about these sculptures. And so here you can see some aspects of the book, and you can see some kind of historical prints that would have been used for press purposes. And it's kind of a nice little snapshot of, you know, the workroom and how these sculptures were being made and transported and stored. And it's quite incredible to see. And here we can see some more images of that dinner party that we just saw. And so there's a cartoon that's been created since, and also a sketch. So very kind of interesting to see how they did PR back in the day. And then if we move on to some other aspects of the book, we can see here the iguanodon sculpture again with that spike. So this is the cast and also the sculpture coming out of it. So it's in the first page of the book there. And if we look at the statues, you can see again this spike on the nose. Now, this is quite funny. So the Gideon Mantell, who found the iguanodon that these were based off of, placed what we now know to be the thumb kind of spike on the nose. So they didn't know where to place it, and he presumed it must have been an addition to the nose, and that's where it stayed for many, many years until future skeletons and fossils proved it otherwise. So that's why the sculptures here have this kind of very prominent nose spike, which I think is very cool, and it just shows you how, you know, back in the 1850s, it was very limited knowledge. You know, the idea of the theory of evolution wasn't a thing yet. Charles Darwin hadn't even published his Origin of Species yet. So a lot of people thought, you know, fossils in general were just kind of complete false discoveries, and everything was being like forged and none of it was real. So you can understand how hard it must have been for paleontologists and scientists at the time with such limited examples of these creatures. They must have been rushing to kind of get their discoveries out there and, you know, actually try and piece them together as best they could. But they are, you know, unknown jigsaws. They don't perfectly fit together. You don't always get a complete skeleton preserved. So you kind of fill in the gaps, and these are the product of exactly that. And so here we can actually see an illustration by paleo artist Mark Witten, where you can actually see the thumb spike back on where it should be rather than on the nose. So this is just a nice kind of artist impression of it. Then moving on to some of the conservation efforts, I love these historical photographs of them cleaning them. I think they're just brilliant. So here we can see them kind of cleaning them with brooms, and I love the one of the ichthyosaur because it almost looks like he is brushing the ichthyosaur's teeth. And, you know, everyone should have good dental hygiene, ichthyosaurs included. So I just love this picture. I think it's great. And then moving on, we can see some more pictures of kind of people enjoying the sculptures and standing on them, as you do. And then we go to the modern day. So here we can see some of the wonderful marine reptile sculptures. And so they're all dotted around. There's quite a few of them. The plesiosaurs are exceptional. And the cool things about the marine reptile sculptures is because of Mary Anning, the fossils that were being found were actually very complete. And so their knowledge of the marine reptile side of things is actually very accurate. So the sculptures made back in 1850 are actually very similar to how they would be today with the knowledge we now know of plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs. So they had a really good idea of what these creatures looked like from the fossils that were being turned out of Lyme Regis and the interpretations that were being done by paleontologists at the time. So now if we move on to the conservation side of these sculptures, so considering their age, they do need quite a lot of conservation work in order to keep them looking as fabulous as they do. And one sculpture in particular that needed work is the Megalosaurus. Now, if we actually look here in the book, you can see that the jaw on this sculpture had completely crumbled away. Now, they needed to fully restore this, and one of the ways they did this in 2020 was actually through 3D imaging and then 3D printing the missing pieces. And if you actually look here, you can get a sense for the size of these sculptures by looking at the people next to the skull. They are humongous, so you can get an idea of just how large the conservation work is that is needing to be done here. They're not small models, and they're heavy. You know, these are concrete, so it's quite tough to kind of replicate that same effect and also replicate the aging of the concrete because, you know, these sculptures have been there for centuries, so how do you kind of age that to blend in? But they did an excellent job, so you can see the result. You wouldn't even know that any work had been done, and that is exactly how the conservation workers want the result to be. They want it to look like no conservation work has taken place, and that's how they know that their job has been done well. So you can actually see here a bit of the construction side of these sculptures, and it wasn't straightforward. Now, they found all sorts inside the hollow chambers of these sculptures to try and prop them up and keep them in the correct positions, but they're actually with a hollow core, and then they have a layer of bricks or tiles, and then a concrete course kind of outside, and then they would do the fine detail to do the skin. So there's quite a few layers that go into these, and there's, you know, columns inside them, and so the actual conservation work to, you know, fix anything that goes wrong with these is quite complicated, because they're not trying to change the process that was done in 1850s, but they don't know exactly how it was done. So it's kind of a treasure chest. They don't know what they're going to find when they open them up if they need work to kind of preserve them. So it's very interesting to see. And then here, just some extra bits, we can see some of the paleo artists that created artwork before these sculptures. So these were the first dinosaur sculptures ever created, but they weren't the first artists' impressions. So here we can see some really amazing artwork of marine reptiles. You've got ammonites, ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs that existed prior to these sculptures. So you can see that they were very interested in the world of paleontology, and there was certainly, you know, a large group of people who were trying to reconstruct these past environments just with limited fossils. But the marine reptile side of things was pretty good because of Mary Anning. They had quite a good knowledge of what was about due to the discoveries at Lyme Regis. So very cool. But that's all I got for you guys today. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'm now off to go watch the brand new Why Dinosaurs documentary, which has been in the making for quite a few years now. So I'm so excited to see it. So I'll link that down below in case you guys want to go check it out. They're doing quite a few showings all around the UK. And I'm very privileged to be going to the London one today. So I'm super excited for that. But hopefully I'll see you guys next time, and thank you so much for watching.